Animal Wars was a tactical RPG in development at Factor 5 Inc. in partnership with Sony Computer Entertainment. It was originally slated for release on PlayStation 3 following the completion of Lair. The game came about as the result of a multi-game contract Factor 5 signed with Sony in 2004, which locked them in to produce several titles exclusively for PlayStation platforms. Lair was the first and only game to ultimately see release through this deal, as behind the scenes relations between the two companies declined. Work on Animal Wars began in 2004 in conjunction with Lair, but whereas Lair exhausted a great deal of Factor 5's resources from beginning to end, Animal Wars was comparatively a much smaller project. For the 2 years it existed in the background, it was work done by no more than 4 people, a lone programmer, 2 designers, and 1 dedicated artist. Animal Wars took place in an alternative universe inspired by the events of the First World War, with each faction consisting of various anthropomorphized animals. Real-world historical figures such as Archduke Franz Ferdinand were parodied, in this case becoming Archduke Ferdinand, whose assassination at the hand of a terrorist organisation of cats known as the Black Paw forms the catalyst for the Great War ahead. The campaign would have focused on a dog soldier in an aviator uniform, although other playable characters were being explored. For instance, one stealth mission considered earlier on would have flipped the scale of battle on its head and saw the player taking up the role of a mouse. From this perspective, regular soldiers would appear as humongous titans on the battlefield. This particular stage idea, however, never got as far as being prototyped. One of our sources likened its gameplay, of which very little was completed, to Valkyria Chronicles. It was meant to be a strategy RPG with a turn-based battle system and a unique oil-painted art style, which one former developer said was like Valiant Hearts in 3D. Its concept of anthropomorphic warfare was deceptively innocent. Certain sketches produced for the game depicted a number of particularly violent scenes, including a dog soldier standing over a freshly decapitated pig. Its artistic direction leaned dark in this respect, though it had yet to be determined exactly how explicit the final product was going to be. In what was said to have been a big contributing factor to Sony being willing to fund it in the first place, the title was leveraging the work Factor 5's people had done previously on the Star Wars Rogue Squadron games. The publisher was keen to capitalise on the experience they had gathered from that series with its blend of ground and air vehicular combat. As explained by one of our sources, a central part of its overall premise was that each vehicle would have in some form built-in special attributes associated with different animals into their design and functionality. For example, cat tanks were able to right themselves regardless of how recklessly they were driven, like a cat landing on its feet. The game's development was intimate, involving few people, but this did nothing to limit its ambition. The action was planned to take place over a set of huge maps, similar in scale to the in-game worlds of Lair. Enthusiasm held for Animal Wars internally was in no short supply, even if it was a small project. The former employees of the studio we spoke to during our research expressed considerable regret over its eventual cancellation. One source went on record as saying, "I was more excited about Animal Wars than Lair because it was a smaller team and upper management left it alone. Upper management interference greatly contributed to Lair's failure." In the end, no amount of excitement among the developers could prevent it from being discontinued. Animal Wars was worked on for 2 years in the background of other projects. This included not only Lair, but also an attempt at rebooting Turrican in 3D under the codename of Project Cyclone. Originally, the contract agreed upon by Factor 5 and Sony specified that Lair would be completed in time for the launch window of the PS3, but this was one promise the developer was not able to deliver on. Lair's development was troubled to say the least, encountering numerous hurdles along the way. Apart from the higher-ups demanding the 6-axis motion sensing tech be utilised, the team simply struggled with the console's then perplexing development environment. Factor 5 was already a company of limited resources, but Lair's problematic life cycle led to multiple staff departures mid-development, leaving them unable to fulfill their end of the deal. The company therefore had to convey to Sony that they would not be able to produce Lair on schedule, and requested it be delayed into 2007. Their response was to cut off Animal Wars plus any other projects ongoing and redistribute their funding into Lair. Factor 5 was incapable of self-financing it, meaning it had to be cancelled. At the time it was shelved, Animal Wars had reached an early playable state. A working vertical slice prototype build was well underway, which included a biplane in a massive open landscape for players to fly over. Animal Wars was never officially announced, nor did it ever leave pre-production. From as little as $1 a month, you can back Unseen64 on Patreon at patreon.com/Unseen64 to gain access to our bonus podcast, get your name read out on the show, and gain access to all these videos before the rest of the internet. Thank you.